Most people see birds as part of the background. They hear them in the morning, notice them passing across the sky. Maybe pause for a moment when one lands nearby, and then move on. Birds exist around them, but rarely feel personally significant. But for some people, it's different. Birds are not just animals they happen to notice. They feel familiar, comforting, meaningful in ways that are difficult to explain. These individuals often form unusually deep emotional connections with birds, sometimes feeling more understood by them than by many people in their lives. And psychologically, this reveals something far more interesting than simple admiration for nature. There's a certain kind of person who feels calm the moment they hear birdsong. Someone who can sit for long periods simply watching birds move, noticing their patterns, their sounds, their behavior. To others, this might seem strange or overly sentimental. How could something so distant and silent feel like friendship? But when you look deeper, these attachments often reflect unique psychological traits, ways of perceiving connection, safety, and emotional resonance that differ from what most people expect. The first major trait is heightened sensitivity to subtle emotional cues. People who feel deeply connected to birds often notice details that others overlook. The way a bird tilts its head, shifts its body, responds to movement, or changes its call. These tiny behaviors carry meaning to them. Psychologically, this reflects advanced observational sensitivity. Their attention naturally picks up patterns in behavior that many people filter out as irrelevant. This same sensitivity often extends to human relationships as well. They notice tone changes, emotional shifts, and unspoken tension with unusual precision. Because of this, they often feel overstimulated by noisy or emotionally chaotic environments. Human interaction can sometimes feel loud even when no one is raising their voice. Birds, by contrast, communicate clearly but quietly. Their signals are subtle and direct. There is no hidden social agenda, no performative complexity. For highly sensitive individuals, this kind of communication feels deeply calming. The second trait is comfort with nonverbal connection. Most human relationships rely heavily on language. Words explain feelings, define expectations, and create structure. But not everyone feels naturally at ease in this system. Some people experience language as incomplete. Words can feel imprecise, performative, or exhausting. Birds offer something entirely different: connection without verbal pressure. When someone watches a bird closely, there is often a quiet exchange of awareness. The bird notices them. They notice the bird. No explanation is needed. No emotional performance is required. For individuals who find social communication draining, this kind of connection feels unusually pure. Psychologically, this often reflects a personality style that values presence over performance. These individuals tend to experience connection through shared awareness rather than constant verbal interaction. The third trait is strong appreciation for autonomy. Birds are deeply independent creatures. Even the most trusting bird remains free in a way few domestic animals do. It chooses proximity rather than dependence. People who see birds as best friends often deeply respect this. They are usually individuals who value freedom, both their own and others. They dislike controlling relationships. They feel uncomfortable with emotional pressure or obligation disguised as closeness. Birds represent connection without possession. This reveals a psychological preference for relationships built on choice rather than necessity. They often believe genuine connection should feel voluntary, not demanded. The fourth trait is reflective solitude. People who bond deeply with birds are often highly introspective. They think deeply, process slowly, and require solitude to regulate themselves. Unlike loneliness, reflective solitude feels restorative. It allows their thoughts to settle and reorganize. Birds often become companions within this solitude. Not interruptions, not distractions, companions. Watching birds provides just enough external engagement to anchor attention without overwhelming thought. This creates an ideal state for reflection. Psychologically, this reflects an unusually healthy relationship with being alone. These individuals often do not fear solitude because they have learned how to fill it with awareness instead of emptiness. The fifth trait is symbolic thinking. Birds have carried symbolic meaning across human history: freedom, transcendence, wisdom, fragility, perspective. People who feel emotionally connected to birds often naturally think symbolically. They do not just see behavior, they interpret meaning. A bird's flight becomes more than motion. It represents possibility. A bird's stillness represents calm awareness. A bird returning to the same place represents continuity. This symbolic perception reflects abstract cognitive processing. These individuals often understand life through metaphor and association rather than strict logic alone. Their inner world tends to be rich with layered meaning. The sixth trait is emotional safety through predictable unpredictability. Birds are wild, but their behavior follows understandable patterns. They are unpredictable enough to feel alive, yet consistent enough to feel safe. This balance is psychologically soothing. For individuals who have experienced unstable human relationships, birds often feel easier to trust. Their behavior is honest. They do not manipulate. They do not pretend. What you see is what exists. This creates a rare sense of emotional reliability. Psychologically, people drawn to this often have a strong need for authenticity. They feel deeply uncomfortable around emotional inconsistency and hidden motives. The seventh trait is attentional patience. Birdwatching requires stillness. Observation requires waiting. People who genuinely connect with birds often possess unusually high tolerance for quiet attention. Their minds can remain focused without constant stimulation. In a culture built around rapid distraction, this is increasingly rare. Psychologically, this reflects sustained attentional control, a capacity strongly linked to emotional regulation and reflective intelligence. These individuals are often better at noticing gradual change, detecting patterns over time, and resisting impulsive reaction. The eighth trait is gentle empathy. People who love birds often extend compassion toward fragile life forms. They notice vulnerability without needing to control it. This reflects a softer form of empathy, not dramatic emotional rescue, but quiet care. They often understand that true care sometimes means simply creating safe conditions and allowing freedom within them. This same pattern often shapes how they relate to people. They care deeply, but rarely force closeness. They offer presence without pressure. The ninth trait is psychological resistance to modern overstimulation. Birds pull attention toward slower rhythms. Watching one perch feed, clean its feathers, or simply exist reminds the observer of life beyond urgency. People drawn strongly to birds often feel disconnected from the pace of modern social systems. They may find digital culture overstimulating, superficial, or emotionally fragmented. Birds represent a return to natural timing. A world that moves according to presence rather than productivity. Psychologically, this often reflects a nervous system seeking restoration through simplicity. And perhaps that is what makes this connection so powerful. It is not really about the bird itself. It is about what the bird allows the person to feel. Authenticity. Quiet companionship without demand. A reminder that connection does not always need explanation. Personally, I've always felt that people who connect deeply with birds often understand something many others miss. That the strongest forms of connection are not always the loudest or most obvious. Sometimes friendship is simply shared presence. No expectations, no performance, no need to prove anything. And maybe that kind of quiet understanding is one of the purest connections a person can ever experience.